Good evening, everyone. Unfortunately, I have to deliver some bad news, and Thomas will deliver some good news. The bad news are that Fola unfortunately had a medical emergency. The good news is that Thomas will jump in. So, our agenda for today is from 18 till 18:10. We're going to present what we're going to do, and from 18:10 till 19:20, Thomas Walenta will take over with the topic of PMO, and from 19:20 till 19:30, we will rate this event and you will claim the PDU code. I encourage you to ask questions during the presentation and the webinar. So, suggested conduct guidelines is mute your microphone during the session. Use your full name to help us identify you for PDUs. Feel free to turn on your video if you like. Of course, use the chat window if you feel shy maybe, or raise your hand to ask question. This session will be recorded, and also AI bots is strictly prohibited. PMI Germany chapter at glance. It is established from 3, now 4 chapters in 2020. PMI Frankfurt chapter was the first chapter in Europe. It was in 1988 established. The scale is for 5 region, 25 plus local group. The membership is a multinational community of about 6,000, roughly 6,000 PMI chapter members from 40 plus countries. Volunteers, we have 150 dedicated individuals, which are fostering network opportunities, driving social impact through projects and working groups on regional and local events. This is where our lovely local group Darmstadt is located. And these are the members of our local group Darmstadt. It is from the English-speaking community with 8 volunteers from 7 countries. Per month, we have 2 free online events. Over 3,000 participants have so far joined our webinars and roundtables. On average, we have 35 attendees. And we have also per month 1 free face-to-face roundtable. And our LinkedIn group is with 520 plus members. So our sessions are free. Now, it's time for learning and to get inspired. Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Olya, for this nice introduction. And to your audience, you expect it differently. So you are surprised to see me here, and you are free to leave. You don't need to listen to me. And this is what I want to share with you. So I was able today to recover an older presentation I gave at the PM Summit in Hamburg last year. So it was a live event of the PMI Germany chapter, and I had a speech about the PMO and how to run the PMO as a program. And I somehow, I adapted this presentation for today. So I spent some hours today to adapt it for today, and also, to see that we have an LGDA webinar genuinely and doing it for that. This was a typical VUCA event. So Fola wrote an email just this morning in Europe, maybe late yesterday in the US, in California, where she is located, and said she had to attend her mother's emergency. So going with her mother into the hospital and see what's going there. So this was clearly volatile. So it was very speedy. This morning we woke up and we chatted on our WhatsApp group in the local group Darmstadt what to do. And it was uncertain, could we find a plan B? So we didn't plan for a plan B. So we didn't have somebody in the background. So we thought what to do. And it was a little bit complex, because On the one hand, we published Fola's speech very prominently, and I think a lot of you want to hear what she has to share. And she is a great speaker and also strategy consultant. And certainly she promised to come back to us. You know, we will have Fola at one of the next webinars, and I'm just a stand-in here. And it's ambiguity because, you know, okay, we don't know what to do, but I said, okay, let's find something. And it is not only threatening; it's also, you know, I'm thrilled to be able to speak this evening, even this morning. I didn't imagine it, and there's curiosity in what we can do and what we can talk about, how this topic will resonate with you, you know, with another expectations. And we will explore a little bit the topic of a PMO, and we have choices to make because we can go left and right and have different options. So I think, you know, that's my belief and my uh, let's say paradigm I'm living from is VUCA. Actually, it's representing life, you know, because life is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I think it's also very positive to experience that and to master the waves of life. Some history about me. So I had my first project in '74, so it's now 52 years as an IBM apprentice, and I looked like this in the picture at this time. You know, this is a picture taken on a vacation trip in '74 with my then girlfriend. Then I did some studies in mathematics and started working for IBM as a software developer and as a systems engineer, and then had the chance to run a first big project for IBM customers. And then after that, I decided to become a project manager within IBM. And this was, one of the life defining decisions I made. In '95, I developed and ran my first PMO for Gotha Versicherung in Cologne. And actually, I ran that for 5 years with a staff of eight people. And maybe you know, this was the first PMO for IBM customers in Germany, because after that PMO was set up, you know, I was asked to set up PMOs in other IBM outsourcing cases, not only for Gotha. In '98, I started volunteering for PMI. I was the president of the then Frankfurt chapter, the one of the chapters that was merged into the Germany chapter later. And in 2002, I developed my first big program management office for Panasonic in Europe. And my latest PMO I developed 2 years for the company of Weiland, you know, the gas boilers and so on. And I will talk about this a little bit later. So the first PMO actually had the vision of, the CEO came to me and said, reduce the time I have to spend on project escalations. Yeah, I don't want to see these bad moods again in my customers. Try to cover this. Try to find the signs when things go wrong and remove the causes. And overall, it was there to move the organization of 600 people in the IT for Gotha to a service-oriented culture, because, you know, they were hired in an insurance company, more like a bureaucratic organization, which is very valuable. If you have an insurance with long-time views, a life insurance, you want to have an organization that is sustainable and that is stable and not moving too much. But, you know, although in these times, like today, we talk about AI and agile, you know, at these times, they talked a lot about service-oriented project culture that has to be done in all the organizations. And that was the task of the PMO. So, for instance, I installed ISO 9000 for this organization and other kinds of stuff. The first program management office for Panasonic, it was a task to integrate different SAP rollout projects, 5, 6 parallel rollout projects, and also operations. There was a data center and there was a call center and all this stuff, and all had to be integrated horizontally, but also to make sure that all these reporting lines, what information they gave to the customer and to management unit, that this is aligned and not contradicting. And in my latest PMO, it was just to establish visibility, transparency for the CEO. What kind of projects do they have? Actually, at this time we had a survey among a lot of companies, and the CEOs were asked, how many projects do you have? And less than 10% of the CEOs could answer this question. They really underestimated the number of projects. And in this case of Violent, we found out in the end, we have every year 400 projects, which is not so bad. It's a huge amount, but it's also indicative that we maybe should do something in the selection process, and that's what we did later in installing a portfolio management system. Flavors of PMOs, we have PMO, Project Management Office, but then we have a lot of other names for it, and they're coming along. So it's like this, the spices in your kitchen, if you see, So we have a Program Management Office, Portfolio Management Office, Single Project Management Office, Project Support Office, Control Office, and so on. And I don't want to go through the list, but I'm sure your company, if they don't use PMO, they use one of the other names here. What is the name for? Why do we choose a name? In many cases, another name as PMO is chosen to distinguish oneself from previous difficulties. If there was a PMO and it failed for some reason or was disbanded, you create something new. You want to make sure that people understand you are different. And then you choose a different name. But I think that's really a little bit whitewashing and maybe not very honest to yourself, because overall, PMO is the headline. We have a lot of PMO supporting communities. PMI, we have PMBOK Guide edition 7 and 8, and there's an appendix about PMOs. We had in PMI the standard for organizational project management, which also described the PMO, enterprise PMO, and so on. And we have now PMO GA, founded by Americo Pinto, which was taken over by PMI almost 2 years ago. And they feature the value ring, a cyclic methodology. It's the guide to understand that, but Americo is very well known. And if you are somehow in a PMO, you might want to connect with him. He's Brazilian, and he's very well communicative and open to new connections. We also have something like a PMO GI, Abdullah Mamoun, and we have Robert Jocelyn, who was my professor at Swiss Business School at Zurich. And so he created a company in Zurich, AI PMO, and they are publishing a lot of research papers on PMOs and also books on PMOs. So there was a very big thick book, and they established 22 PMO service domains and a lot of PMO service functions, which you have. So if you want to look what is possible PMO, then this book is really something to look at. And then we have the PMO Squad, Joe Puss. We have P3O by Exodus from the UK. And we have the IPMA Delta organizational assessment. And these 4 things, I just have to close my window because it's raining. Sorry. So, back. So, these are individual certifications. So you can go there, have a certificate, and then you are certified as an individual. IPMA, the assessment certifies not individuals, but organizations, which also is something like ISO 9000. You know, you have a label in organization, ISO 9000, and then, you know, you can use it for marketing and for being different for others. So now, maybe you know, there is a chat box in this call, and maybe you can open the chat box and try to give short answers to these three questions. So, were you ever involved in building or running a PMO? So this is interesting for me to understand if I'm here talking to people who have no clue what a PMO is, or people who have a little bit experience with building and creating and running a PMO.
So we have one answer from Ralph Fowler, not yet. Vishal Prabhulal Charula, no, not yet. Peter Reinders, yes, since 2003, 10, 20 plus children. Peter Pedersen, I have not been involved in any PMO, so cannot answer any of the questions. Zaid Al Rafai, not yet.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know, if you are involved in a community of people who are running PMOs, and there are many people down there, and about 80% of organizations have PMOs actually, but yeah, not yet building, just working in. Gottfried,
Jonathan
okay?
Vazan, yes, global PMO and site PMOs, more than 10 years.
Yeah,
Arun
good.
Ramesh, yes, PMs were under PMO mainstream, 20 plus PMs under PMO.
So Jonathan, you are very experienced then. You can give me some
Holy
feedback in
Bigelow, said, I built one. It lasted 3 years. Just me worked on it. Project managers were literally connected.
Yeah. Good. Thank you for answering that and give me so not too many of us here have experience with the PMO. So there are some PMO studies and books and everything. And so when I ran 1995 for Gotha Versicherung, my first PMO, I looked for literature for books, and I only found this one, you know, a little bit into the PMO building, and it was by Thomas Block and Davidson Frame. Actually, what they said, PMO has 5 functions at this time, and as you will see, you know, these 5 functions somehow carry through, because a lot of PMO still do training, define the methods, the standards, supported projects, and so on. You know, this is Davidson's Frame. He is a dear colleague of mine. He passed away 3 years ago, but he was a fellow, like I am a PMI fellow, and he was also on the board of directors, even twice, you know, once I think in the 1990s. So I very much appreciated him, and he was a very friendly and helpful guy and a professor. He founded a university in Washington, D.C., together with his wife, Jan Pieck. Were very nice people. So then I have a white paper by Hobbs, and he did a big research, also funded by PMI in 2007. So they had 500 PMOs in the research, and although they said, okay, you know, a PMO is dealing with methodology, reporting, monitoring performance. That's what I did at Gotha. And but 83% of PMOs are younger than 5 years. That's what Hobbs found out. It's a very, very big report. Then we had a German study by GPM, IPMA, and they also said methodology, reporting, coaching, these are the main tasks. And but also for them, so less than 30%, 35% of PMOs are older than 2 years. And then we had a UK study, and it was 700 something participants, very big indeed too. From then, the studies all get smaller, because researchers, they don't find so many PMOs or organizations to ask and to that. But also this study, even with 768 participants, said, okay, reporting methodology is that. And the last I want to mention is a study from last year with only 134 participants by PM Solutions. PM Solutions is a company who's started doing such studies for some time, and although their number of surveyed participants goes down. So you see, these are things you can look up in the studies. And my thing, PMOs live longer when they create value. So value is certainly a top, but most die young, And so my take is if you set up a PMO and it's disbanded after, let's say, 3 years, it might not be a bad thing, because maybe the PMO was tasked with establishing something, it did establish it, it is running, so then it can go like a project, But if you don't want a project to be dissolved, then maybe you should find new purposes, So then my program management office for Panasonic, basically we had a lot of projects and operational tasks. And and we had set up the program management office with 8 functions. We call them strategic level functions. And they came from dealing with business strategy to resource management across the project and operations, test and transition, which was a summary task. So this was more about integrating all the stuff. And this was more of making sure the messages, the reporting is aligned, because at some point of time, it happened that one project would complain about, let's say, our SAP automation, and they would have this dispute disclosed to the client, and the client was not happy about that. So that's what we really eliminated over time. So coming to what we want to achieve, and it's the same in projects now. The new definition of a project in the PMBOK Guide Edition 8 is it's creating value and in a unique environment, but it's temporary. So let's talk a little bit about these terms. What is an output, outcome, benefit, value, and so on. And the first thing is here in the headline, outputs and outcomes. They are measurable, they are tangible, they are objective. So if you build, let's say, a software, you can look at the software and say, yes, here's the software. And it functions like that, that's objective. But if that software is helping a client, that's very subjective. If the client doesn't like it for some reasons, then the client doesn't see a benefit. And if he doesn't see a benefit, then he doesn't produce value with that benefit. So that's the subjective part, and you have to deal with that. Let's have a look how this plays out in the differences between a project and the program and operations. So that's a project, it's a bridge to cross something. Maybe there's a river or a bach or whatever. It's probably a good project. So it was in time and budget. It was very nice towards specification, but it has no value. It's not. It's useless. Is it the fault of the project manager? I don't think so. It's the fault of somebody above the project manager. Now let's look why we have programs and what programs are. Oh, that's a program. A lot of bridges, and a lot of streets, and a lot of other things, you know. So a traffic system that allows for fluid transportation. You know, that's the purpose of a program. And you need a lot of projects building bridges and a lot of projects building other stuff or building all this electronic systems that are steering that. And if you have such a traffic system that really eases traffic, you know, you have the value in operations. So people are living, the father comes back home 1 hour earlier, more time for family. That's value. Value out of that program result, that is a functioning traffic system, and which is built of a lot of projects. So a successful project creates a product output in time and budget that can contribute to benefits and out can. Doesn't mean it does, you know, because it cannot be proven that this project is really valuable until you have a program or you have a sponsor in an organization that is using that project output to use it in operations, you know, a progressing program. And I'm not saying a successful program, because a program is only successful if it is limited, but a program can go on and go on. And you can imagine that this kind of traffic system is maybe a program that takes decades, maybe only 1 decade to build, but then decades to update and to maintain and so on. But this traffic system achieves benefits, the benefits of reduced travel time, and these can create value if they are used. And yes, values are created using benefits over time. So that's for me, um, and I'm researching on the difference between project and program, um, and that's for me the these terms. You know, if you look at the PMO, then PMO, what I want to suggest to you is, you know, see the building of a PMO, the creation of the PMO as a program. Because in the beginning you might have, let's say, only one autobahn built, but then over time, you know, you will add other stuff because it's beneficial, you know. So once you have built the PMO and it's used, you run the PMO, then you can create the values. But if you run the PMO and build the PMO as a project, then you kill it. Then it is being killed maybe after 2 or 3 years. And that's what we see in practice. So that's my take on these surveys I presented to you. Another difference between projects and programs, you know, and I have a paper on that there are different animals. You know, you have here is the program. You want to do some things to have requirements and a strategy delivering some benefits. Benefits to stakeholders that are users. The sponsors might be different, management benefits. So, and you have all of this in a context, you know, the society or the weather and then season and so on. And then who's running this? Let's say it's an elephant, you know, an elephant has a long view, long vision, has a good memory, and he's running that as a program manager. And then he uses a lot of lions to run the projects and operations within that program. You know, and as you saw my PGMO, you know, I have 5 or 6 projects in parallel, but a lot of other tasks like operations or call center that were also integrated in this total program to deliver the benefits. And the benefits are not just benefits that add up from different projects. So maybe the benefits is created because you have 2 projects, and in the interface, you know, there is something that is creating a benefit for the users. And the projects and programs can differ substantially. I introduced the lions and the elephants, and you know the project is always temporary per definition and has a unique result. Well, from PMBOK Guide Edition 8, it has a unique context. But there's a little bit different. What is a unique context? Every context is unique because time is moving on and things are changing in the world. So what does temporary mean? Temporary means that you can make a schedule. Otherwise, it's difficult. If you don't have an end date, you can have milestones in between, but a total schedule is difficult to make. Without a schedule, you couldn't make a budget because the budget is, what kind of funds do you need at every interval in that schedule. So if you don't have a schedule, you can't do a budget. And without a budget, you can't do planning. And without planning, you can't decide on success because success, means that you are achieving pre-planned goals. And maybe if you are not temporary, like a program, you don't have really these overall goals, and success is hard to determine. In a project, although the context is fixed, well, we know it's not fixed, but that's the assumption, no? That's the perception. We try to make it fixed. And so we might execute project change management if we have changes to the scope, but we don't like it as project managers. So we wanna go on with what we have, and especially late changes, just before cutover, they are really introducing VUCA to our projects. And projects always try to stay in control. You have a plan, control, and you see the deviations and see the risks and so on. Program is not defined by being temporary, if you look at PMI's definition of a program, but it's defined by integrating related projects and activities. It's important. It's not only projects, but it's also other activities. And in my PGMO for Panasonic, we had a lot of non-project activities, which also were to be integrated because they had interfaces to projects. And they are integrated because we want to achieve benefits. So benefits achievement is one of the core tenets or targets or purposes of having a program. So benefits can be expected and planned because, we want to have this benefit of reduced travel time. But as you go on in the program, you might develop and you might see opportunities with emerging benefits, with things you didn't plan before. Give an example. There was a big program with the Rhine rectification of the Rhine River in 1800 something. It was called a project, but because we didn't have the term programs at this time, and the guy who did it was Tula, I think for 20, 30 years. And they rectified the River Rhine for the expected benefits of reducing sickness because we had a lot of mosquitoes. And also the second benefit was that we could have more soil where we could plant food, though otherwise it was submerged twice a year and so on. So rectifying the Rhine was the idea to make life for the people living along the Rhine more valuable, and they achieved that goal. But if you look at the Rhine today, and even at the end of the century, of the 18th, of the 19th century, the Rhine developed into the most important pathway for industry in Europe, because all the shipments from Switzerland, France, Germany, Netherlands, they use the River Rhine, and it's a tremendous important infrastructure part in Europe right now, and so this was not visible when Tula started his program, but it emerged over time, and it's quite usual that if you have a long-term program, which is not limited, that over time you find out new opportunities and new emerging benefits. So that's the benefit of having benefits as the main target, because that you are looking for them, you are adapting them, and it automatically, the last statement is, automatically makes programs agile. because you can easily welcome changes if they are producing new or updated benefits. And therefore, the context and the scope is floating. You have to look at all of this in every kind of time and and see how to develop this. So I want to point out one book, and it's by Tom Peters, and he said this will be my last book. So he wrote books for 40 years or so, and he's an author. So Tom Peters is really um, a very entertaining speaker and an author, and I can recommend this book. And from this book, I developed this slide, and the slide is about, well, on the left-hand side, this is how we structure things, how we structure projects, portfolios, and even PMOs. So we have a governance system, who is reporting to whom, and what are the reporting lines, and it's all about rationality and control, plan and control. For all these three things, portfolios and PMOs and project. And governance, which is the core word here, is very important. That I found out that when I built my programs and my project, that through governance you can really design how a project, how a program is developing, how things are being there. Where does the subcontractor report to? To the project manager or to one of the boxes below? Um, and and these are all decisions you make that are helping people to understand what their role is and what they are in charge of. On the other hand, on the other hand, this is not all of the project. We also have the human side, and there are a lot of people which are filling these boxes, and these people uh, have different capabilities. So some of them are risk takers, some of them are people who are very good communicators. Some people are related to each other, the spouses or kids or whatever. Some people know each other since a long time. Some are new. So there is a network of people, and leadership actually takes part in this network. So these real people, they fill the roles. And if you have one very introvert guy as a project manager in this role, who is leading, and we have to look at. On the right-hand side is the domain of programs and of strategy. So if you look at strategy development, strategy implementation, which is a process, a permanent development, and the same is for programs. It's a permanent, as I said, agile adaptation to the changing context. Then you have to deal a lot more with leadership and the network and the relationships with emotions and ethics. And you have to enable this, and you have to do that. And so coming together with both is then very important that you are open. As a project manager, you would be more on the left side, and on the as a program manager, you would be more on the right-hand side. So, and as you move into program management as a project manager, probably you will have to work a lot on your features to develop your features on the right-hand side. And how to do that, it's your network in your program, and you see these quotes, and again the quote from Tom Peters in the end, you're working 220 days, maybe a year. So, and many people, they just go to lunch and eat with people they just see by random or with the same group every midday. But why not use these lunchtime to talk to people and to engage with stakeholders? Because eating is also something that is making us calm and positive, and it's a very good environment develop good relationships, So, all these guys from the soccer clubs or from business management say, deal with the people. No, after that, was anything mentioned so far new to you? I hope so. If yes, what was it? No? Do you have any other ideas about what I said?
So, Vishal Prabhulal Charola, he has the whole PMO community as well as the literature. Was new for me.
Okay. Vishal, so if you are a project manager right now, maybe you're looking for your career and what kind of options you have to develop your career. For sure, PMO, getting into a PMO is a good career step because it opens up your community and it opens up your capabilities to deal with a lot of stakeholders, beyond one project, because you are now seeing all projects.
Zaid Al Rifai, I have a question actually. Should we keep our question until the end? No, Zaid, if you can ask it right now.
Is it okay if I open my microphone?
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, so hi, thank you so far for the presentation. I have one question that got me wondering. In one of the slides, you mentioned that the outcome overtakes or has a more value than the output. Could you please tell me more what's the difference between the two? Because to me, it's the same.
Yeah, the output is what you can see, the bridge, that's an output. The outcome is how you can use that bridge, if somebody use it. So the outcome always involves the usage by users of the output you created. And in this case, I showed, maybe it's a little bit not to your question, because this bridge is unusable, but there's often an output produced, let's say an app for users, and the app is maybe perfect, everything's fine, but if the users that are expected to use this don't use it, the outcome is not good. Yeah. So that's the difference between output and outcome. Output is a tangible product, if you want, and the outcome is the usage of that product. And then the outcome is objective, yeah, because you can see if users use the app, let's say, but if the users perceive the outcome as positive for them or negative, that's the role of the subjective benefit. Does that answer your question, Said?
That answers it fully. Thank you so much.
We also have a comment of Gottfried Lehmann. The overall concept to consider PMO as a program was not obvious to me. It is a nice translation in brackets for leadership team not yet convinced to install PMO.
Yes, yes. And I saw that, when I came to Weiland and established the PMO with the cyclic program, then first leadership asked me, you are a consultant, you are paid every hour, so come up with a concept how we do that, And I said, I have first to understand what your expected benefits are, what your requirements are, who is the stakeholder should be, what are the priorities, and so I need some analysis time, and I did that, and I will show you in a moment how we did that. So it was a very good approach to have a sustained PMO. Anything else? You can also ask at the end, how big the PMO is, to my experience, is much smaller than shown in slides. Personal functions are not included. Yes, mostly not. You know, sometimes PMOs also are the home department for project managers, but it's not too often. You know, so how big the PMO is, and you saw the surveys. So in my experience, it's maybe starting with 3 people, 3 staff, and then going up to 8. But I have also seen PMOs with 20 people. In my PGMO example, we had 8 functions. You know, each function had 2 people, so we see 16 people at the high time. But it was reduced because not every of these functions really proved to be beneficial in the end. Side note, bridge example for project not dependent program. Yeah. Good for it. Yeah. For sure, it's a snapshot. Yeah. Reporting hierarchy and how PMS do reporting. Yeah, absolutely. So I was a program manager for this program, and actually at times I had 4 reporting lines, and you know, it was VUCA, but I liked it because then, you know, if you have 4 bosses at times, then no one of these can really dominate you.
Zaital Rifai has a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's between a question and something regarding the earlier slides we had in this PowerPoint presentation. I was surprised that there were so little PMOs generally with the studies you showed us. And I was also wondering, why do you think that is the case, and why is the success rate so low? Like what do you think, in your opinion, were missing, and what were the important things they should have focused on?
Well, there are many reasons, and the surveys also disclose some of these reasons, what they think. My personal opinion is the main root cause for the short life of a PMO is that it is run as a project, you know, and that's one of the slides I say, you know, if you run a PMO as a project, you kill the PMO because often a PMO is started when a executive has a big problem, and you know, he says, I solved the problem by starting PMO, and this PMO should establish, let's say, a project dashboard. So, or integrate agile and waterfall, whatever, yeah, develop a methodology. And then guess what, you know, you need 1-2 years to establish this dashboard, establish this visibility, and then you're done. You know, why should you continue on that one goal you have has been given as a project by this sponsor? Also, what you will find out, you know, once you are starting to develop and people are seeing what you're doing, the sponsor who gave you the money and the funding and the order to do that, you know, he will lose interest. So maybe the sponsor goes away, or if you see after 2 or 3 years, maybe a sponsor goes away anyhow because it is the company gets promoted, different job, whatever. So if you do not, as a PMO, permanently reestablish yourself in a cycle as a program, adapt to the context, and then you are doomed to fail. That's my personal view on why a lot of projects, PMOs, don't reach more than 5 years. You know.
I understand. So,
yeah.
So basically, the key is connected to another keyword you mentioned earlier, which is networking. The PMO has to have a very good network in order to lead projects, create value, and establish itself inside the company. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
There is another question from Pavel Burtovoy. On which level function leader, engineer, worker, PMO ends?
I don't get this question really. What do you mean, PMO? And the PMO is a.
May I ask? Sorry. Hello, everyone. May I ask just to clarify my question?
Yeah.
What I mean is the PMO is quite a big organization, and in the projects there are different people involved. So just a question, maybe like from Thierry, where it ends? It ends on program manager, or it ends on the, for example, like in agile, functional feature leaders. So where it really ends, where you can say this is PMO and this is not a PMO.
Yeah, it really depends on the purpose, on the mission, and on the functions the PMO is doing. So if let's say the PMO should select projects by strategic alignment, then you have somebody that is on a strategic level involved in the management boards and everything. It's a very high level of guy in the organization. So if you are supporting, let's say, a bunch of projects with a tool, then you might have to have a engineer with that is giving that support and helping people to use the tool appropriately. I've seen that, if PMOs try to install a, let's say, portfolio management system. By the way, we had a presentation here in the chapter that typically such a program of installing a portfolio management system costs about 3 or 4 million euro, if you have everything involved with the project cost and so. But then you also need a support system, which are the engineers. So it really depends on what you're doing in the PMO. And even, you might have very low-level people. So if you are running some reporting, then maybe you only use a kind of secretary, who is gathering all the data and put it in the real things and checking it. So it depends, and I've seen both. And I will come back to that question. We have maybe a skill set for people who are building the PMO, and we have a different skill set for people who are running the PMO, which might be a little bit less skilled, But okay. Does it answer your question somehow?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Good.
Thomas,
Yeah.
Peter Reinders wants to ask you a question. Peter, go ahead.
Yes, sure. In the beginning, but also during the lifetime of a PMO, I've always was asked the question, can you quantify the benefit of a PMO and of the quality of the PMO members? And so we have tried certain things, like looking into average project durations, and we got solid numbers out of that, of a benefit. Also, we asked people from the outside to investigate the stakeholders and the team members, how they see the coordination. But of course, it depends, as you already mentioned in the discussion, what kind of PMO do we have? Do we have members of the PMO who just provide templates, but then they will be replaced by AI anyway pretty soon? Or do we have really leaders there? So can you explain a little bit how you measure and how do you go into these discussions?
As you said by yourself, it depends a little bit what the mission and the expected benefit of the PMO. And I will come back to that measurement and reporting and the value later a little bit. Maybe we can delay my answer to that. Okay?
Very much so.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Rachel has an answer. I'm not sure if what happens when an organization has a vision which translates to a program, but has a bottleneck where there's one person acting as a many lines. Well, yeah, what happens? It's bad selection of people to fill the positions in the program. You should never have a bottleneck, and actually, when we established for Weiland the resource management, we had a bottleneck identification task. So what was the bottleneck, let's say, for infrastructure projects, and then we have identified one, two people, and then we could act on this risk. A bottleneck is always a risk, and bottleneck is also countering your efforts to be more resilient. So you should tackle it. It's, and it depends. Maybe you have higher risks and more problems than to do that. You will always have bottlenecks, because if you remove one bottleneck, the next will pop up. So you will also always have bottlenecks that are really limiting your speed. Yeah, that's a matter of fact. Rachel, that's okay?
Yes, thank you so much. That's clear.
Yeah, thank you. So now this is the process, how you set up the PMO is an iterative program to deliver benefits. So iterative means you're starting with stakeholders and you come back to stakeholders. So this is you see, identify the stakeholders, how many do you have, then you look at the requirements, so by service, by interviews, by talks. Then from these requirements, you damp down, you really concentrate many less benefits that are expected, what they expect from a PMO, And then if you know the benefits, you can build an architecture, which is a static structure of a PMO, which then develops into a roadmap, how to tackle these benefits, how to create enablers for the benefits. So these are maybe dashboards or project health checks or reportings or portfolios or whatever. And if you implement the enablers, which can be a project for each enabler by itself, then you operate the enablers. You give it to some people who run the dashboard, who run the health checks, and what you have to develop. And then if you operate that, you measure what they do, and in this measurement, you will set your KPIs. And now the KPIs we defined were defined actually here. So when we documented the benefits, we also documented how do we want to measure these benefits. And actually, some benefits you cannot measure very easily, so you have to have some proxy measures, and but nevertheless, you define it up here, and then you will see it here, and you will go back with these measurements and values to the stakeholders, and they will accept it or have new ideas. And this cycle should be done every half year at minimum, maybe earlier. So the first cycle is certainly the most important, but the rest also will come. So show you how I did it and this whole is in a PowerPoint. You can look up in my LinkedIn posts, So stakeholders. So we identified 80 plus stakeholders. Here we have the sponsor, we have the PMO steering board with the executives, we have the project managers, the leaders of projects, business functions, also interesting. What do they expect in terms of project management? The PMO itself, and we have the employees that are working in projects. So some are specialist engineers, some are maybe just people who are helping with processes. So we had 80 stakeholders, and we went in and did questionnaires, different questionnaires, interviews, and then we came up with a list of requirements, 219 requirements. Some had the same requirement, others had different requirements. So we listed them all. We looked at them all, and then we condensed them and found out a list of expected benefits, 25 expected benefits. There was a priority in them, and for each of these expected benefits, we defined an owner, we defined the measurements, and we defined how to implement these benefits. Then we created the architecture of the PMO, and we found out, okay, from the benefits point of view, what kind of structure would be helpful. So we looked at portfolio management, at project management governance, and what we call culture. And in culture, you know, you have something like a campus with training, with coaching, mentoring, certification, but also a culture in building a community, communication. So what we had is weekly brown bag sessions, which people were invited over lunch to come to a session, and somebody presented, let's say, 20 minutes about risk management, you know, and then we had a discussion over lunch. Then all this stuff, you know, with standards and templates, integration, and even reviews, you know, the health checks of projects were here gathered under the governance topic, and portfolio management was on how to find out which projects to run in the next half year. So this is a full picture in my presentation. You can download, you know, and it explains a lot. And this is real life PMO, you know, that was developed over 2 years, and it's I'm not sure if it's still running, but certainly it should be look a little bit different than it was defined there. So over time, a PMO needs different capabilities. So you build this stuff, and you know, once you build, you don't go away, because you have the next cycle, and maybe you will refine what you built in the first cycle, and maybe prepare for the third cycle, and so on. But you also run the stuff. So you have the enablers, and somebody has to do that. And I saw it, what PMO, not at this one, but another one, that, you know, they employed a bunch of secretaries to run the portfolio, to have all this data built into the systems, and to produce the reports and everything. This is not the best way to do it today. You know, we have AI and everything, but nevertheless, it's a different skill set you need to run a PMO. And then you go back to stakeholders, because from the measurement, you can prove the value. You know, you can tell stakeholders, look, we agreed on having these benefits. Measuring the benefits we have by KPIs, you know, we see that we produce this value. And maybe the stakeholders have a different opinion, and you have a good discussion. And then you can say, okay, maybe we should refine these benefits. But don't talk about the functions, enablers, you know, talk about benefits and value and measurements. And then you are in the game, and your PMO will never end. Start with the stakeholders, identify benefits, and close with the KPIs. And if you're starting with stakeholders, you know, traditionally a PMO is looking at this lower part. So they start with a structure, and they're building a roadmap and implement something, and they forget about that. They're doing this for somebody, you know, and what their requirements. They don't know what the requirements are really. And they never thought about benefits, because benefits is a strange term for many project managers. So necessary for success is to deal with the people, as I said, in the network, you know. So potential stakeholders you should look at, you know, for sure the guys who ask you to build the PMO, the sponsors, it might be more than one sponsor, the executive management, because they look at you because you use up funds the organization have, and they're always jealous about funds. They don't understand what benefits they produce. Well, project managers are one of the key stakeholder groups, and most project managers don't like the PMO. Why? Because the PMO is regarded sometimes as a bureaucratic unit, which just asks them to do something they don't see any benefit. So you have especially to look at project manager requirements and define benefits for them, and show them the value of the PMO. Otherwise, you will have a big resistance from project managers if they don't like you. Resource owners. So in the end, you know, project managers cannot work if they don't have resources. And they might have their private networks, so they know people, and they come to these project managers. But sometimes these people are in some departments where, or let's say the infrastructure guys are there. And then you have to know who these resource owners is. Maybe these resource owners also have a requirement to understand who is working on what project and why and what will be the outlook. So they need some planning input to also build up skills, which is a strategic task for them, to be always able to deliver the right skills at the right moment. The project teams themselves, customer executives, users, operations, and yeah, I found customer executives especially supportive. So if you have your own executive management and it's a little bit skeptical, then customer executives who are enthusiastic and say you're doing a great job, that can help you a lot on this level, because they also talk to each other in other events. So this is the end of my presentation. There is more about it. If you have, I don't know, if you have some more questions, I'm happy to go into them. Otherwise, I hope it gave a little bit good input to you. Xing.
Yeah, yes. Thank you, Thomas. Hi, good evening. And yeah, thank you for the very great presentation. And I have one question because it's I don't know if do you have some experience as PMO to collaborate with the enterprise architect together? Because I see there are some similar domains. Yeah, it's between the PMO and architect and how to collaborate and together. Yeah. Thank you.
So actually, if you look at the whole stakeholder group, not in the first iteration, but later on, So the enterprise architect was one of the stakeholders. And as he was involved in knowing what the PMO can help him, can deliver value to him. So the interconnection was more tight. He also can give, if we're talking about a PMO architecture, the enterprise architect should be part of this discussion and design. Yeah, I fully agree.
Okay, thank you.
Pavel.
There is another question.
Yeah.
How critical is to have good PMO campus? Usually elements of it is just obligatory things to use the app or get permission to access production. And what happens if that is not available, all learning given to all functions internally? Can you, Thomas, please elaborate on my question on qualification, the value of PMO and your experience?
Yeah. So let's first tackle Pavel's question. I think most PMOs I've seen have a kind of campus, some training, some mentoring, some support, because you also, if you remember my first PMO in 95 for good acquisition, one of the targets was to establish a service-oriented culture. And what we really did is we had about 200 people in basic workshops about project management, what it is, so that they understand that the project is dealing with stakeholders and fulfilling their needs and their requirements. So it is always also a overlap with the HR function who is providing, let's say, trainings and others. And it's a good idea also to have the HR function involved in designing your offerings, but it's very project specific, and normally they are very happy if you take over some of the tasks. The same applies of what you say here is, onboarding people. So if in the Walent case, so we had maybe 5 to 10 new project managers coming in every month, onboarding external people, but also new hires. And so the onboarding processes was very important, that they were up and running in a short time. And some of them were not up and running after 4 or 6 weeks. A disaster. So that was one of the KPIs, for instance. When the benefit is that the PMO can help to reduce the time that is used for onboarding, and then we had some measures and some enablers for that benefit, and we measured the time, and we reduced it to 3 weeks by putting a lot of, for instance, by putting a lot of preparation for the onboarding even before the starting date. So sending them a welcome package, sending them a questionnaire, sending them this stuff which is what's happening now. And there are other things. You know, we had another benefit is that we want to increase transparency and visibility of the whole portfolio. And this means that we need a weekly reporting from every project. Or at least, let's say, every project manager raises hand every week and tells us something. How's it going? New risks? What is going on? And then, you know, you start this, and the project managers don't want to do that. And so we had in the beginning, we started to do that, and even the manager said we want to do that, and the project manager just didn't do it. So we had a feedback every week of only 50% of projects reporting to a very simple reporting sheet. And though the benefit was that we make that 90+%, you know, and then and the KPI was very easy to measure. And we had different, not projects maybe, but tasks to improve that. You know, it's identifying the people who are resistant, talk to them, but also, you know, easing up the reporting requirements, make it more simply, maybe automate stuff. So a lot of activities were around that to improve the reporting feedback from 50% to over 90%, what we did, but it also took half a year. Yeah. Does it answer your question, Peter, or you have a further comment on that?
Now, this is actually also my experience. Onboarding of new project team members was a big argument. Yeah. And it was clearly seen in the departments, the benefit of the PMO. So they actually actively asked the line managers to include us in every onboarding of new employees, even those who are not in the project teams. So this was really very good. So I amplify that. Another thing that was shifting back and forth, I have this PMO experience for more than 20 years, is do we have a localized or a corporate PMO or something in between? And I have seen extremes which were not good and something in between. And of course, it depends a little bit. Yeah, I know Bayer quite a lot, and they have used PMO not only for product development, but also for things in production, like establishing a new production line. And they had a corporate PMO, covering the aspects, general project management aspects of all these projects, no matter whether it's operations or R&D. Or even HR. So what's your experience with this?
Well, the PMOs I built were only, you know, localized, and for one program, we have a program management office, it's only one, you know, and for sure there were some, let's say, satellites. So if we had a program and we had a rollout in Russia as one of the 20 countries, so we had a little project office, you know, doing some administrative stuff in Moscow. But overall, the responsibility was taken care of from the centralized. So for the corporate environment, you know, I can go back to HP or I can go back to IBM. And IBM had what they called a project management center of excellence. Only 20 people globalized, you know, and they were reporting even to the IBM C-suite, you know, and they were a C-suite sponsor for them. And what they did is to standardize project management across the globe. And across the globe means in every country. So Japan and Germany and US are different, and they had different ideas about project management and PMOs. So they had to standardize that. And also the methodology, you know, and this was initiated even by the CEO then, Lou Gerstner, who came in 1993 or whatever. And he said, we want to be a projectized organization. And though he said, and to implement that, I established a center of excellence. And then the Center of Excellence, they developed not a hierarchy of PMOs, but they said, okay, there's a business unit, let's say software group, who is developing software, selling software. And, they by themselves, they said, we need a PMO for our business. And then they developed a PMO and let's say there was not a reporting line from software group PMO to PMC, but they knew each other, and the standards they were set globally were adhered to by the software group, but adapted to their circumstances. And then if you break it down, we had country PMOs. We had a PMO in Germany, and actually the chapter leader of the Frankfurt of the Germany chapter, Wolfgang Friedrich, was at one time my boss and heading this PMO for Germany. And what they mainly did on a country base was to develop their project management staff, with certifications and all this stuff. This was the main task, because they didn't need to standardize it or translate it, because all the main things were done on a global level. Yeah, so this is my answer to that. Yes, there are a lot of PMOs, and I'm not a fan of hierarchized PMO levels. They should be really localized a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree. Centralized or corporate PMO is exactly what you said, center of excellence, so exchange ideas. And what we should not forget, it's also a possibility for a career of a project manager in a different functional area in the company, which we have done many times. Yeah. So thank you.
Well, as an example, what they did, they established what they called a Project Management Knowledge Network, PMKN. And actually it was supported by a big tool, a knowledge management framework, a tool. And there were about, at times when I was there, 40,000 users, project managers of IBM globally, 40,000 users of that knowledge management. And most of them put in their assets, knowledge assets. So if they define something new in project management, then they put it in there. It was reviewed and assessed. There was some people who were looking at it. I was asked to be an assessor for 1 or 2 or 3 assets, and then these assets were observed in how many times they were downloaded and used. So the KPI for this knowledge network was reuse of assets, and from that they could prove that the knowledge management asset was even providing profits to IBM.
Thank you again.
So sorry to have filled you with knowledge that was unwarranted, but I hope nevertheless it was a little bit enlightening for all of you. Thank you very much.
Another thing that we perhaps should do is the people who really want to connect, they can put their LinkedIn link into the chat, which we have done. So I will do that soon.
Good.
So I would kindly ask you to scan this code or just go to the link above and rate this webinar. In the meantime, there is a comment from Ralph Fowler. Thank you for stepping in today, Thomas.
My pleasure.
Peter Pedersen, thank you for the impromptu presentation, Thomas. Much appreciated, and I learned a bit more about PMOs today. I hope that Fula and her family are all okay. We wish we're all okay.
Another thing, can you just post the link in the chat, because in the screen, we cannot really use the link. Thank you.
Just a moment. If everyone scan the Mentimeter, I will continue now. So, join our next events in English. On the 12th of August, we have an online webinar. The event's topic is Believe in Your Profession by our speaker, Alfonso Bucero. He has been a few times our speaker in local group Darmstadt, I have to say. And on the 19th of August, there will be an online event, a webinar, with the name of Leader Tango, with our speaker Aga Gasperini.
I know both of them well, and Alfonso is a PMI fellow like I am, and he's living in Spain. So as Olya said, he was 3 or 4 times already presenting, and he's very positive. So, and people go out engaged. And Aga, actually, I know also for some time she is Polish, but I think living in Spain, and so she is a consultant and and also tango dancer, and the Leader Tango is a trademark of her, and she is presenting it here, and it's really interesting how tango. You know your partner who is leading in all of this. That's the leadership capabilities that she's presenting here. And Aga, actually, she was 3 years on the PMI board.
Yes.
Yeah, I can support that. I'm a certified business coach, and so I got a training also in this tango. And if you bring C-level people together to dance tango, you see that each one of them want to lead. And so one has to yield in. So that's a very interesting setting. Yeah, you can imagine that, and you can even smile. Yeah, imagining the situation. And so we have done that at the International Coach Federation.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. So please join these events. You can register in the webpage of the Germany chapter in the events. And join our mission. These are the team members of the local group Darmstadt, with team lead Florian Adrian from France, but he lives in Darmstadt. Mohamed Reza, Afghanistan, but lives also in Darmstadt. Honorary member Tufik Habli, he's from Lebanon and living in Beirut. Myself, Olya Stefanovska from Macedonia, but live in Stuttgart. Almira Hasanovic, originally from Montenegro, but lives in Düsseldorf. Maria Roba, originally from Macedonia, but lives in Brussels. Our newest member, Laura Samso Pericon, originally from Spain, but she lives in the Ruhrgebiet. And of course, Thomas Walenta, Germany, Bad Kreuznach. So if you want to join us, please send an email. You can contact us or through email. And of course, the PDU code. Thank you for your attendance and hope to see you on our next webinar.
Thank you. Have a great evening, and thank you so much for the information.
Have a great evening. Ciao.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye. Ciao.
Vishal Prabhulal Charula has a question. I will stop the recording.
Yeah.